You could motivate, inspire hundreds of millions of people around the world.
You were giving every ounce of your soul. I got Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, and Bill Clinton. I could take any training program we have, cut the training time in half, and increase the competency.
When did you know you had this gift?
He was a very kind of right-wing, straight-laced guy that taught speech. And I get in a speech class and I screwed around. I was pretty humorous. And so I would take over the class to some extent. And so after class, Mr. Cobbs, Mr. Robbins, you need to stay. I need to speak to you. And I was like, oh shit, I'm busted. And I sat down and it wasn't what I expected. He goes, you know why I've asked you to sit down here with me today after class? And I started to say what I did. He goes, no. He said, it's unbelievable what you do. I've never seen anybody stand up and capture every kid in this room's attention when he speaks. And the reason I took over the class is there was a senior song leader, cheerleader, Nancy Coleman, who I was totally in love with. And I was like flabbergasted. I didn't have any reference for that whatsoever. And he said, I think you have a gift. And he said, I know more about your story than you probably think I do. He knew about my mom and things like that. And he goes, I think I found a speech that embodies who you are. And it was called The Will to Win. And it was all about the only way I'd made it to that point in my life was pure will. And he goes, I want you to read this, memorize this, and compete in persuasive oratory. And I was like, I'm not, you have to be a junior to do it. He goes, I don't care. I'm going to get you in. And so I read this speech. I was very emotional reading it. It was so tapped into my own story. And I got up and I took first place and another first place, another first place. And I won about 80% of the time as I win these competitions over the year. And so that developed that skill set in me. And then I decided to run for student body president, even though I wasn't the most popular kid in school, but I did it differently. I went to everybody and found out what they wanted and came back and told them the truth. I don't think this could be done. I think that could be done. And, I won. And so it taught me that you didn't have to be popular, that you could, if you told the truth and served, you'd get through to anybody. Because I beat the most popular kids in school by far.
Starting your seminar, if you're doing some with Jim, he's letting you speak at 20 years old. I think you're at your first seminar. And there was someone there who was basically criticizing you. Tony doesn't know shit. He's really not doing anything. And then there was and he's basically saying, hey, I've got a client that has a snake phobia. He said, I can cure it. But the better one that I think a lot of people would be more interested in, and I think you could create a whole new business. I know you've done well. I think people have said, Tony is now a billionaire, as you were able to give a woman an orgasm who had never had one in her life before.
Without touching her.
Without touching her. So, I'm sure there's a lot of guys listening out there saying, holy shit, Tony, you got to write a book about this. And then there's a bunch of women out there who are not sexually fulfilled, where I think there'd be a 50-50 audience there on that one.
Oh, no, I made my career by taking challenging psychiatrists originally and saying, give me your worst patient. I'll handle them in an hour, who'd been working for 5 or 6 or 7 years. I started that in Vancouver and it became kind of my calling card. Now today, I train psychologists and psychiatrists. They study my work and they get continuing education credits. Kind of crazy. But in those days, I was angry to see somebody spend 5-6 years at something that I had learned techniques that truly could wipe it out in less than an hour, sometimes 15 minutes. And so I use that. I take somebody like the snake phobia and I'd bring it out, they'd freak out, and I'd, at the end, wrap the snake around them, and people would be like, holy shit, this is amazing. But then I did things to like the Army. I took a training program that they've been doing since World War I on training people in pistol shooting. And I told the general I could take any training program we have, cut the training time in half, and increase the competency. And he said, you're crazy. I said, no, I'm expensive. We negotiated. I went through a year's worth of top secret clearance, and then I did a whole series of things to the Army. And I cut the training program by 3 days out of 4, 1.5 days versus 4 days, and qualified 100% of the people instead of 70% of the people. And so that opened up doors. I got to do coding. I got to do other things of that nature. And then I started working with sports teams. And then I got Nelson Mandela and Mother Teresa and Bill Clinton. And then, Randy, it's just patterns. Everything is patterns. So if you want to think about, like, I have 5 kids and 5 grandkids. I have a 50-year-old daughter and I have an almost 4-year-old daughter now. So I have quite a spread. I adopted my first 3 kids when I was very young. And I look at them today and I think, okay, the world is changing so rapidly. So how do I make sure my kids and grandkids can do well, or you and I can do well?
At some point, people realize that they're better than different people. I remember I was playing golf. I'm a horrible golfer. Kaiser, by the way. Best place on earth, as you
I love Kaiser, yes.
And I'm playing with this guy, and I'm a horrible golfer. And we have I have a pro golfer who came in as a friend, and we're all playing golf. And I'm just, I lost 40 balls that round. And it was interesting to hear the conversation between those 2 guys. And the golfer said to this player who had been in 8 All-Star games, 10 All-Star games, he said, at what point did you know you were better than everyone else and 99% of people weren't going to make it? So when did you know that you had this incredibly special gift that you could motivate, inspire hundreds of millions of people around the world, which you have? I mean, put up on my social media, I'm doing Tony Robbins, this is my dream podcast. And
thank you.
I got hundreds of DMs. I posted today on my story. I'm so pumped. I'm going to Tony Robbins' house to do the show, and it just fucking exploded.
That's awesome.
I mean, you've influenced so many people. When did you know you had this gift?
I think my gift is different than people think it is. I think my gift is the depth of my caring. I know that might sound corny to some people, but when people ask my wife, what's something about Tony that nobody knows? And she says, how much he prepares. Because, I could get up and do a 4-day seminar for 12 hours a day, without thinking at this stage. But every audience I organize, I do interviews for people in advance. I find out what they're after, what they're doing. When I do my Date with Destiny, I got 5,000 people and they do a 10 to 20 page document. I read them all, but I'm obsessed with giving my all every time I can serve. And when I'm up there, I think that's my secret. I remember a friend of mine, good buddy now, came to a seminar years and years ago. And he was like, what is this bullshit? This positive thing, crap, this guy up there. In those days, it was the 80s. You wear a suit and tie while you're in a seminar, and it's, I'm by the fire. It's 110 degrees, sweating. And I was on stage and I was, I get people to change their bodies because that's how you change your mind. Just try to change your mind. It doesn't do shit. You got to change the physiology first. So I change their bodies. And part of what we do is we have people extend up and rise up and jump and all these different things. He was with a guy that was an NFL Pro Bowler, and the other guy he came with was a billionaire. It's like, I'm a billionaire. I'm going to do this jumping shit. And the guy's, and he goes, 15 minutes later, we're all jumping because he said, we watched you and we watched the sweat go from here all the way down to the end of your tie. And it was obvious, like you were giving every ounce of your soul. So if you could do that crap, I could jump, right? And so I think I'm able to reach people because you can't fake that for 4 days, 12, 13 hours a day, and they know they don't have to do it, right? They can feel it. So people open when you're there to truly serve them, not serve yourself. And I think that's my biggest one. The second thing is I'm obsessed with strategies about how to get results faster, and they work because they're the best. They're not the best because I created them. I modeled the best combinations. So when did I know that? I don't know. Probably shortly after I was working with the president, and I'm 31 years old, 32, and I'm sitting with the president of the United States. We were in Camp David, and it's Bill Clinton at that time, and he's wanting my advice, and I'm listening to him, and I got like, this guy's the president of the United States, and man, he is really messed up, and he's the most powerful man on earth. And so you begin to realize we're all just people. But my skill set kept growing, and when I started being able to do anything from turn around the army to speak in any country and take people 12, 13 hours a day and have the impact. Obviously, I couldn't miss that I had that skill or the interventions that I'd done. And then, we all have some sense of inner pride. And, it's funny for me today because I'll have young bucks come up to me and say, hey, remember my name because, someday, I'm going to be where you are. And I always tease them, go, gosh, that's fantastic. Because when you get where I am, you'll be where I was. Because I'm not going to stop growing. So let's do it. So I love that sense of growth and competition as well. So, but I don't look at it as like I have this great gift. I look at it like people have gifts. And my job is to help them uncover them. Not I have a great gift. The gift is just loving on them and having a skill to figure out how to get there.
I'll tell you a quick story, and I know we have to go. When I was an unhappy lawyer, I met a guy named Brian Metaboy.
Yes, I know Brian, of course.
And Brian did it. And so at some point, our company is going to go public, and Brian had heard about it, so he invites me to this thing at Peter Gruber's house.
Yes.
I get there, and I'm the only one there not in the business, the entertainment business, and everyone just the agent.
That was a movie mogul meeting for sure.
Armani suits, these young agents. I'm a tech guy, so I don't know if I had jeans on and a shirt like this. I'm looking around, and you got people doing jumping jacks.
Well, it wasn't jumping jacks. It's sort of.
They were doing jumping jacks in their suit. I was worried that they were going to rip their shirts. And I remember walking out of Peter's house again. Like I read your books. I have a book, Awaken the Giant from Within, first edition that I brought with me. It's a paperback. You can see it's got yellow pages that I've read a few times. And I honestly walked out again, like you had motivated me already. I'd read your first book, Yes. And here it was. And so that was the only one I had been to. But I remember walking out of Peter's mansion, and I remember thinking, God, I had this house up off its foundation, 29 square foot house on my pinky finger. When I got out of the car, I was so pumped. So
well, imagine doing that. We did that for like 2 hours at his house. That was years ago. But imagine being with 10, 15, 20,000 people and doing 4 days and nights that you get rewired. I want people to know that what we do here is not about thinking. Stanford did a study. We don't have time to talk about it, but people go through and they get treated for depression. That's what they were interested in. And 60% of people make no improvement. 40% of those people improve 50% on average. Some people get well, but most people are on drugs the rest of their life. And when they did the study with my group over 6 days with no drugs, no anything, 93% were no longer having depressive symptoms. 7% improved. 17% had suicidal ideation, meaning considering suicide going in. None of them afterwards. A year later, 71% reduction in negative emotions.